I'm Andrea Anderson, and I'm with Team thisABILITY. They just finished the Endless Mountains 5-day adventure race through Pennsylvania that Rootstock Racing put on. It was 360 some miles. There were 7 stages. There were 32 teams, and spoiler alert, out of 32 teams, they came in 8th place and 7th place in the co-ed premier division, which is really exciting. It was really fun to watch their dots, even though it was terribly nerve-wracking. Like, I so wanted to be there. But I'm excited to hear about the race directly from them and not just from Chip. And so on that note, I just want to make sure everybody knows who was on the team for Endless Mountains. They're all with us. Jason is the newest member to our team, and we're going to let him go first. Jason, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your race history and maybe a little bit about your life outside of racing.
Sure. So, see, I am married, 2 daughters, dogs, live in Connecticut. I've been racing for since 2016. I think it was the first race. Do mostly 12 and 24s up to this point. I've done one multi-day race, C2C, a couple of years ago. So this was my first 5-day, big expedition style race.
Exciting. And so tell me just a little bit about your life outside of racing.
Is there life outside of racing? I don't know.
Probably.
Well, I work for Bank of America, work from home, kids, dogs, just the usual. Nothing else too exciting outside of that.
All right. Thanks for sharing. We're going to go to Tomas next. Tomas, tell us about your race history and what your life is like outside of racing.
Sure. My first adventure race was in March of last year. And since then, I've done once or twice a month something. Most of them ones I've done are the shorter ones, shorter than 12 hours. Most of them has been solo. The first expedition race was C2C this year. That was my first expedition race, if you call it an expedition race, which was 3 days. And then my second expedition race was last month in Croatia. And then this was my 3rd expedition race. So I'm fairly new to this, but I think I got too addicted to this. So I'm doing a lot of these. So it's a lot of fun. So I'm having a blast with this. So outside of the adventure race, I gotta be careful because, my wife is kind of getting annoyed about all of these. So, but, so yeah, outside of adventure racing, I'm just an engineer with a parts supplier for automotive. Right now, I'm doing software. I mean, mechanical, but right now I'm doing software, and I'm also a landlord. I have properties in Airbnb that I rent out, and that's about it.
Busy. You're busy.
Yeah.
Aren't we all? Okay, so Caitlin, you're next.
All right, so I've been adventure racing since 2016. I've been racing with thisABILITY for a few years now and haven't looked back. We've done a bunch of expedition races together, C2C a few times, most recently Lesotho, and now Endless Mountains. So yeah, I guess I'm one of the veterans on this team most recently with Chip, but it was good to have 2 new guys to kind of take on the journey with us.
And what do you do outside of racing?
Outside of racing, I am active duty Air Force, currently stationed at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama.
Awesome. I know you have kids too. So 4 of us on the call have kids and families and lives outside of racing. Chip, why don't you take it away next?
Yeah, so Chip Dodd, team captain of Team thisABILITY. I would say Andrew's kind of the co-captain, so she keeps us in line, but unfortunately this race she couldn't join us. I think, like Jason, I think I've been racing, I think it's been 2016 or so. Just did the smaller races, and then I think 2018 was our first big expedition in Belize, 4 days, and I fell in love with it. And I think Endless Mountains was my 11th expedition, if you count the C2Cs. We've done, like Caitlin said, we've done Africa. We've done it twice now. We did Ecuador, we did Oregon, we did Belize. and now endless. And it's just a lot of fun. I love it. And I always say this is where I feel most alive, is racing. Outside of racing, I have a couple different companies, but the primary company works with people with disabilities, intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so basically we're a Medicaid, Alexa needs to be unplugged. So basically we Medicaid pays us, we hire staff in to support, hire staff and then deploy them all across Virginia into people's homes and in their communities to help them live the best life possible. Hence the name thisABILITY instead of disability. We basically try to focus on what people can do instead of what they can't do. So that's how a handful of old people can do pretty well in an expedition race, because it's one of those things we can do. So.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes we actually forget to share what our team name actually means. So thanks for doing that. So getting straight to the point, we'll talk about some things like the navigation and more specifics later, and we don't necessarily have to do round robin the whole time. So I might just call you out here and there. And I want to make sure that people that are listening live know that we're monitoring Facebook. So if you have any questions specifically for the team, you can put them in the chat and we'll try to have them answered. But what I really just want to know is, what was your highest point during the race and what was your lowest point during the race? And what did you do about both of those situations? Like, did you celebrate the high times, or did you keep it to yourself? And, those low moments, what got you out of it? I know a lot of people at home don't really, can't really understand how they would get through certain things. So if you could share that with us, I don't know, I might as well pick on Jason first. What was your high point during the race?
I was thinking about this question, and I've had highs and lows in shorter races, but I think highs and lows also come along with kind of how you're feeling. And feeling sometimes impacted by how you're managing nutrition and other factors. So I think I did a really good job managing nutrition. So I didn't feel like I never bonked. I didn't have this really low, real big low, then bouncing back to a real big high or anything like that. I feel like I was pretty even keeled, but I would say that the bike section through the elk country was, I would say, a high point in just terms of what we got to see and how great that section was. I thought that was really great. So I would say that's the high point, but I didn't feel like I had a super low point during the race. Wow.
With 5 days, no low point.
I mean, it was a blur. I mean, I'm thinking back, trying to think, I don't know, does anyone else remember me?
Well, I definitely had a low point during the race, and it's the most memorable part of the race for me, I guess. So I can take that one. But section E was one of the most difficult trek sections during the race. It was a pretty laid back, I'm going to say laid back in quotes, laid back race up until that point. And then section E is really what separated the teams. The monster trek section, which everyone knew was going to be difficult. But we went into it and we were doing pretty well. It was just a really long section, kind of late into the section. It started raining. We actually were able to get a little bit of sleep. But actually we were coming back to the TA for that section. It was in the middle of the night, early in the morning. And we were on this long road, and we actually were coming off just missing a checkpoint. We had tried to get one last checkpoint prior to going back to the TA. We couldn't find it. We probably wasted about 90 minutes, looking for it, but just decided we didn't really even know if we were in the right area. So we're kind of discouraged coming off that. And now we're going down this long road in the middle of the night. My feet hurt, so I was just kind of trying to make it. And actually, Tomas kind of lightened the mood a little bit, because he was just talking nonstop, trying to lift my spirits. And I was just kind of, down. And he turns to me and he says, do you want me to stop talking? And I said, yes. And then he says, well, it's going to be really hard for me, but I'm going to do it. So he's a real team player at that point. But I mean, once we got to the TA, it was early morning, dawn, it started to get light again, and we were able to recover. But I remember that moment specifically.
So I want to just share some context. So stage E was a trek leg, but it was what, you started it on the second day and it went for 33 some hours for you guys, right? So, and it was estimated to be between 26 and 50 miles. So, you know, Chip and I are from Virginia Beach, which is flat land, but there was also an elevation change of 6,700 feet. I mean, it was a significant leg of the race. And on top of that, there was a lot of strategy for that leg of the race. And there was quite a few points that were optional. And I know you guys went for some of those. We're going to talk about your strategy decisions a little bit later, but that is a long time to be on your feet and a lot of elevation. And that cracks me up that the way you got through it was for Tomas to be quiet. Because I've been in races with Caitlin where I'm like, okay, I think we need to talk now. So I started talking and think, I don't know if she wants that or not. Anyway, so Tomas, what was your highest point? Well, I should ask Caitlin, what was your high point? That was your low. What was your highest?
So 2 high points come to mind. One of them was the biking section that Jason mentioned, but the other was actually the last TA when we were getting on the paddle. The course was set up so that there was mandatory and optional points at just about the last trekking section. So just about all the teams were at the last trekking section at the same time, trying to maximize the number of points they could get. So it just turned out that we were all, I mean, when I say all, I mean a lot of the teams were getting onto the water at just about the same time. So it was really cool that, you know, we had probably about 6-hour paddle left. But there was a bunch of teams, you know, that kind of converged on that same time period to get on the water. And so it was really fun and really neat to be racing with all of our friends that we knew. You know, we're at the back end of this race, we're almost there, and we're on this, you know, this kind of weird night paddle, and everyone's experiencing, you know, sleep monsters and seeing weird stuff. But it was really cool to be racing with all of our friends at the very end of that race, just knowing that we were almost finished.
So we had someone ask in our chat, well, a couple of things. Someone's asking if it's similar to Spartan races, and someone also asked about a map of the course. So I'm going to answer that really quick. And I'm going to say that it's not that similar to Spartan races. Yes, you do have to carry a lot of gear, but you change disciplines. You're on the clock the whole time. So once you start the race, everything counts. So I am showing you now, this is the tracking site, and this is the entire race. It started out with a short orienteering course here in the town of Puxatawny, something like that. You guys can probably say it now, and I can't. But then there's this bike leg that went all the way to, bike leg. And right here is a TA which changed to a pack raft section. And so they inflated their boats and made their way down to the next stage, which was another bike stage. And they came up to this trek stage E, which is where Caitlin was saying was their low point. And so the blue line that you're seeing is the track that the team took. And so there's some interesting things that happened. So we need to find out more about that. But just to keep going, after the big trek section, they had a big bike section, and onto the water where Caitlin was saying they met up with most all of the other teams. A lot of them were on the water at the same time and probably seeing a lot of each other. And that really long paddle, that was a 60-mile canoe section, and it was broken up by 2 different trek legs. And so the tracking site, you can go back and look at it. If you go to Rootstock Racing's website, you can go back and go to the tracker. So anyway, we're going to look at some nav decisions, and that's a sneak peek at the tracker of the whole race. But then let's go ahead and ask Tomas, what was your highs and lows of the race? Were there any that were different than Caitlin's or Jason's?
Well, one of Caitlin's is similar to mine, but the lows, I don't know. I was high pretty much the whole time. I mean, I don't understand how, but it was just I mean, the only drug I was using is caffeine. So I don't know why I was high all the time, but I was almost high all the time. However, the low.
Tomas always had a smile on his face.
Yeah. The one time I would say that I was
just like that.
yeah. The one time I would say I was the lowest point was the pack rafting section with all those very low water level. Yeah, that one took a little bit of me. You know, it's like, you know, getting out of the boat all the time because we're getting stuck on those rocks down that pack rafting section. So yeah, I think that was the one where I was a little bit low. Okay. Now for the highs, one of my I think I had 3 high points. My first high point was on the what's it called, Bilger's Rocks. Oh, look at that! I haven't seen that. Bilger's Rock, where we had to hunt for these checkpoints through all these crevices and caves and stuff. That was so good, and it was like, I think it was 1 or 2 in the morning the first night. That was so beautiful. And then the other high was coming out of the big trekking section when we had this big bike ride. Beautiful scenery. We were leapfrogging with different teams and doing shortcuts and meeting different teams, and like that was another high when we're on that long bike after the long trek. That was another high. But definitely the best high from all of the sections was that last paddle section. You know, with no sleep. The last night we didn't do any sleep. You know, seeing that fog at night with all the other canoes through rapids, stupid. It was so stupid, yet so fun. And just studying all those hallucinations and going through all the, you know, all of the other ones and singing at the same time and trying to stay asleep and watching that fog convert into monsters and like all the trees convert into monsters and trying to avoid the rocks and the rapids at night without seeing anything and just trying to get Jason to say just left and right and straight because couldn't see anything from the back other than the fog and the sleep monsters. That was that's what I would assume. I never done mushrooms, but I would assume that's what psychedelics would look like. That last paddle section, I would assume that's what it looked like. That's what it feel like. So yeah, definitely a high on all different levels.
A high in every sense of the word. Well,
Yes.
I think what might be surprising to people that have not done a race like this is, you know, you guys haven't really said anything about how much you had, how low you had to dig down to keep yourself going and motivated. Because 5 days is a long time. But Chip, what about you? Did you have any highs or lows different than the rest?
Yeah, one that they forgot was in the prologue. We're like, maybe we're 30 minutes into the race. This lady who's older than us comes running beside us in a dress and is asking us what we're doing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to explain it, but we're hustling because it's the prologue, right? You got all the energy going. She's keeping up with us, no problem. Talks with us for a little while. And eventually towards the end, she's like, okay, before you go, here's a homemade Pop-Tart. Take this with you. And Tomas got it on video, which is stellar. I watched it before we got on here. So just the energy of the town leading into the race, I thought really pumped us up. Like the town gave us breakfast. It wasn't the race director. It was like the town wanted to give us breakfast and they ran out of food and racers had to go out and buy food out in the community. They wanted to reimburse the racers for their food. So really that Punxsutawney town just really was excited that such a big international kind of event had descended on their city. So just the whole beginning of the race and that lady with the Pop-Tart was just I was stoked about it.
Why don't you share what usually happens in Punxsutawney once a year?
Yeah, so it's known for Groundhog Day, right? There was a movie about it. And apparently, I think it's like once a year the groundhog comes out, and if it sees its shadow, it means the weather goes one direction or winter's over. And if it doesn't see its shadow, then it's ready for spring or something like that. So but like 100,000 people come to this town to see this groundhog come out, and it's quite cute. It's a very big deal. There's a groundhog handler, and he brought the groundhog out. We all got to take photos with Punxsutawney Phil. So it was a neat start to a race, as opposed to just like getting off the buses and go, you know.
And all your CPs during that first trek were to find statues of Punxsutawney Phil, right? That's the name of the groundhog.
Almost all of them. There was a few that weren't. There was a school we went to and a couple other signs, but they really wanted to show off their town. So the prologue was Rogaine style, where teams just got their map and you open it up and you have no idea which way to go. You just start running and trying to figure out where you are. It was a really good way to break up the teams. And then I think it was a 10-mile run. So that really, it got us from being this big group of like 80 people out to, the faster teams were able to make it to the TA first. And it wasn't a goat trail on the way there. Yep.
Great. So,
sorry.
I was just going to say one more thing before we look at the maps again, so you can explain a little bit more about your strategy in the nav. I just really want to get a feel for what it was like to be on the team since I wasn't there. I know what our usual roles are, and I kind of wonder, like, what role did you have, and did it change at all during the race, or how did that play out, and was it what you expected? Was it difficult to manage? So can you tell me a little bit about the team dynamic during the race? And I'm gonna let Caitlin go first because she's been on the team. She knows how we usually operate. So I kind of wonder, like, how did it compare to that?
Well, it was kind of similar. Chip was lead nav, but we had 2 sets of maps. And so Jason took the secondary nav. And actually, I thought that was incredibly helpful for the overall strategy of the race. There were several times which, Chip would say something, make a decision, and Jason would kind of be like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? And Chip would be like, oh, well, no, actually, let's do this. So there were several times where I felt like having the secondary nav and having Jason on it was incredibly helpful and helped us, avoid any major nav errors. So Jason was secondary nav. I was kind of like the timekeeper. I mean, after the race, Chip made a comment that I was militant on the sleep, and I guess I was. We were pretty disciplined as far as keeping moving this time. We stopped a few times to sleep. I think we got 7 hours total of sleep, but we moved. Like, we were very steady, and again, I think that contributed to our success. Tomas was very much our entertainer. He kept things light on the trail. He definitely, lightened the mood for the entire team, and I think was a really good asset as far as keeping our positive energy going and making sure that everyone, was happy and good to go.
Awesome. So so you're the timekeeper. You're really good at logistics. You've always been good at that. So I'm not surprised with that at all. Thomas or Jason, did you feel like you fell right in, or did it take you some time to figure out what you could contribute?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't discuss it like ahead of time. I said, oh, you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to do this. It kind of just happened organically. So yeah, I'm glad I was able to contribute in that capacity.
Yeah. Chip, what do you think about the team dynamic? Was it any different from your perspective? And you played your usual roles, I assume, which are a lot of them.
And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's scary going into a 5-day race with people that you've not really raced with. Tomas and I did the Shenandoah Epic, and unfortunately, after 12 hours, we had to drop. But we had enough time to just get a feel for each other, and I knew personality-wise it was going to be a good match. But still, after 5 days, 12 hours is not a test for a 5-day race. So that was complete wild card. And then Jason, we had a chance to do the leapfrogging while we were doing Naira's longest day. So I knew he was a pretty good nav, and I knew he was pretty fast on his feet and was able to bushwhack, because we spent 10 hours bushwhacking through rain, crappy stuff. And so he also seemed like a good fit. So most expedition racers would say, absolutely not. Do you race a 5-day race with somebody you've never raced with? You're an idiot. It's going to go wrong. So I came in a little bit leery. I was like, I know better. I shouldn't do this, but I'm, sometimes cocky, and I figured I'd take the chance, and Caitlin didn't say no. But yeah, I mean, we got Paraguay coming up. We had this race in Paraguay, and so I've been training super hard. I mean, I'm talking like carrying rocks in my backpack, and I got 10 pounds of weight on my bike and just being stupid. And so I went in thinking I'm going to be the team captain, lead navigator, Sherpa, just a little bit of everything, keeping an eye on people, trying to do race mom a little bit because Andrea's not there. But I knew Caitlin was really good at the logistics stuff and keeping us on track on the overall course and the sleeping and just knowing when to stop, because I don't ever want to give up a checkpoint. I want to keep going until I run out of time. And so I knew she had that whole section on lockdown. I didn't have to worry about that. And she also did a lot of team mom and some of that. So, but between Caitlin and I think we kind of had the full package where if Jason and Tomas came in with a bunch of skills and we use their skills, if they came in just going, guys, I'm just here, I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm just trying to keep up, then that's fine too. We would have been able to handle it. But luckily Jason and Tomas stepped up and they helped a lot with the navigation, had a second set of eyes on everything. And so I thought the team really clicked. We worked together, and you know, I wouldn't say we had any arguments, we had disagreements, but we got over it. Like, I want to go this way, you want to go that way, whatever, you know, flip a coin and I win, you know, whatever. So I don't know, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think, you know, bringing new people onto the team is a lot of fun. It's also challenging, and, you know, you just never necessarily know what it's going to end up like. But I think it makes it easier if you have two people or even sometimes three people that have already raced together. So there's either only one or two people who are kind of new. I don't know. I've always liked adding people to the team though. So that's really fun to hear. So let's dig into the navigation a little bit. I'd shown the map before, and I guess I'll share that again. So I know from all the great media that was coming out, they took a video of you guys as you were starting this trek section, that stage E, and the video showed Chip explaining his strategy, which was the team strategy of going for all the mandatories and getting as many optionals as you could. So a lot of points were mandatory. And up until this stage, from what I've heard, it was not quite as challenging. You had picked up all of the mandatory points and all of the optional points leading up to stage E. So there were some interesting choices, I'll say, leading into this. Maybe only, you know, one or two little baubles that we probably don't need to talk about, except that they sounded like they were on purpose and just didn't work out.
One of them we should talk about. So scroll down just a little bit. The one to the bottom left that we went out and back.
Right here.
That's
is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that one right there. That was absolutely on me. I got to talking to Jason. We're just riding down a dirt road, having a good old time. Totally missed the turn to the north. And then we hit that road and went up, and we're like, where the hell are we? Jason and Caitlin figured out, like, whoa, we're getting very close to an off limits area. Tomas and I are down there. Tomas is trying to talk me into turning around. I'm like, they need to come down here. And he's like, no, we need to go back there. And we went around and around, but they were right. I was wrong. And I turned around and we corrected pretty quickly and got back on track. But so the idea is that if you're navigating, you know, don't get too in depth in a conversation when you got turns coming up. The next one, if you go up a little bit, we went off to the east. That one was actually a strategy decision, which sometimes things go your way and sometimes they don't. At that point, it was really hot. The team was pretty worn out. There's a lot of uphills and stuff like that. I think at that point I'd taken some of the weight off the guys just to help a little bit. If you notice right at the very top of your screen, there's a big gully or reentrant. And so going from that CP, yeah, pull down just slightly. No, the other way. So you see that Huntley or whatever right there? So that big reentrant, what we're trying to do is avoid going all the way down that topography and all the way back up to the TA, mostly just to save the team the trouble of going downhill and right back uphill. The previous big reentrant that we came up took almost like an hour in granny gear. So what you see there is I'm trying to get around that gully and come up, which would mean we put in more miles, but a lot less topography. All of us were doing fine as long as we're on flat rolling hills. It was just struggling to go up the hills was the problem. But what you see there is we came over, everything was fine. Then we turned north and we just hit a dirty, muddy road that was just totally rutted out. It was going in the wrong direction. It was obviously the maps. There was not going to be a clean way to get up to that TA. So unfortunately, we turned around and had to backtrack. It's one of those, it could have worked out in our favor and it would have been a stellar, smart move. But the nice thing is we very quickly figured out this is a really bad idea. Let's turn around and get the hell out of here before we get, knee deep in mud and it takes an extra hour. So we ended up going back into the gully and coming up. It ended up not being that bad, but it did waste a little bit of time.
So what I'm hearing is you had already started prioritizing, well, and I think almost every adventure race, we do this right away. We look for the shortest route with the least amount of elevation change. And sometimes you have to go a little bit longer in order to save some elevation. So it was a good effort, but you didn't make it, it helped some. How much time do you think you had lost with those couple of
I went back and looked. That was about an hour and 50 minutes combined.
Okay. Did you
Yeah,
say an hour and 50? Like
Yeah.
almost 2 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
So and that one that we were going towards the out of bounds, that was one of those situations, and actually happened twice because it happened later on the other bike leg too. But it's like where you need to start thinking like a race director when you've got a very small shoulder and you've got these big huge trucks flying by you at like 60 miles an hour. Your kind of radar starts going off. You're like, I don't think they're sending us on this road. You know?
Yeah, so I know I'm jumping ahead, but I think what you're talking about is this decision right up here.
Yeah.
This is after the stage E trek, and this is the next bike stage. And it looks like, you know, you turned a little bit south following what you probably thought was this, and you didn't. And so this road was an out of bounds road. You obviously figured it out and went back. You didn't get any penalties for that.
Yeah, that was a really tough one too from a navigation standpoint. I mean, even when you look at this map, the red road looks like it just follows the river, or the red track. It looks like it just follows the river. So navigating, and this one we weren't talking. This one we were actually paying attention. Right as we went through that little Truman town, we saw the rail to trail cut off to the right. But we decided if we stay on the road, it's going to be faster than the rail to trail. I was expecting an intersection, like with a traffic light or a stop sign or something. As long as I stayed straight near the river, everything would be fine. But that road just nice, gradually curved, going up or going down, kind of in that south-south or west-southwest direction. And we're just cruising along, just going along, and it just, you know, one of them, you can see the bearings are almost the same. We started climbing. Jason's spider senses start going off, saying we're going uphill. This is a crappy road. I started looking at the bearing and all that. So we figured it out fairly quickly. And the funny thing is the wildlings were right behind us. So we figured it out, and it was like, okay, we got to turn around. Let's tell them first. And then we tried to tell them, but we had just been climbing this like 6% grade, and it kind of sucked. And it took a lot of energy, and it was hot. And yeah, they had that suspension of disbelief. They did not want to think we were in the wrong direction. So we kind of went around with them. And at some point we just said, you know what, we're going back. You guys can keep going if you want. And so we turned around and came back, and eventually they saw the road sign that they were on the wrong road and turned around and came back. That was, you know, we were kind of leapfrogging with them and playing with them coming down the hill and everything, which is always fun to be next to teams, especially ones where you have good friends. But it just goes to show the navigator. It's when you think you've made a good decision, you want to defend it even when you're not looking at the facts. And so what we try to do is like, okay, facts are, you know, we're not next to the river, we're not next to the railroad trail, we're going in a southerly direction, we shouldn't be going south yet. We just need to call it, turn around, and go back. You know, and yeah.
I want to add something with regards to that. All those wrong turns, so to speak, that we did. Any kind of, even the shorter ones, because we did several wrong turns, not just those longer ones, but any wrong turn that we did like that, it was, I mean, when we went off course like that and we realized quickly, there was no drama. It's like, okay, we messed up, let's go ahead, figure it out, change it, fix it, and go back. I mean, that's it. There was nobody getting annoyed at any other. We say, okay, fine, we made a mistake, we move on, we fix it, and then we go back. That's it. So I was pleased that anytime we made a mistake like that, we recovered as quickly as we could, and none of us got upset. You know, we just fix it. That's it.
So I think that's something that adventure racing can teach someone. It's also something that you have to bring to adventure racing. You have to have that spirit of, you know, it's sunk cost. We've got to move on. It's not going to help anyone to get upset over this. Mm-hmm. So it's really great to hear that our team still has that vibe no matter who's on it. And I think most adventure racing teams are like that or strive to be. And the other thought I had while you were saying, you know, the grade, what I'm showing you is the tracking map. And even with this map, it's really hard to tell that that's you're going up in elevation. I mean, you can see the topo line there, but when I go back down here and share the E section, I'm going to also share what the race maps look like. So the race maps do not look like this. They do not have the detail. And I'm going to go back to the other view so it's a little bit easier to make out the checkpoints. So this is the leg that was the crux for everybody. The blue is, of course, thisABILITY, and having the strategy of getting all of the mandatory points first and then seeing which optionals you could get. These points up here are the northern points that were mandatory, and these points that are a slightly lighter green color down here were the optional points. So of course they wanted to be able to get as many of these as they could, and they needed to get all of these to stay an official finisher. Even in the short course division, you needed to get all of these mandatory points. So I don't know, Jason, do you want to tell us about how you started this off?
Sure. So, I mean, how we started off, I mean, you know, when we left the TA, we kind of knew we were staying to the north, right? So we went to 18 first. And then it's funny because I think you had, I went back and read some of your posts, and you had mentioned a statement about us zigzagging instead of going in a loop. And it's kind of like common, like now you look at it, hindsight, it's like, oh, well, you know, we could have just gone 18 right to the next one to the northeast instead of going and getting 21 first, right? And picked up 21 on the way back, like we did it as a loop, right? So, but we did end up going to get 21, and then we found a nice pine grove to get some sleep. So that was our first sleep, was around 21. And then we just went up and hit those northern ones, you know, up there.
And so then you also, though, didn't seem to stay north. Like some teams would have come around here, I think, maybe, and then picked up some of these on the way back. So how did you decide what to do there?
I don't remember like how we decided to the route that we chose at that time. I don't know, Chip, do you remember like why we were kind of what is that one up to the one up top there, to the left? What one was that? So 20, and then we dropped down. Is that what happened?
If you zoom in a little bit, it'll be easier to see.
Sorry.
So we came out of TA and went to, I think that's 19 to the top left, and that 19.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We went to that one first, and then we were gonna. Again, we're looking at a 30-hour trek section, right? We know we might be out even more than 30 hours. Like the race director said, be prepared for 48 hours if you're trying to clear the course. So what we're thinking of is we're going to do like a big loop all the way around and back. But as you're progressing around the loop, we're looking at what's our speed, what's our time. We need to be able to start cutting checkpoints. So on each of these legs, we said, let's go for the mandatory points first, and then we can start, you know, jettisoning ballast, meaning the optional points second. But like where you see there, where we went up and got 19, came down and got like 21, and then went back up, or 18 and 21. That was just, we wanted to clear that section so that as we come around, if we went through that cluster at the bottom, we didn't have to navigate back up. See that cluster at the bottom with a bunch of greens? Our hope was to get down there if we had time and energy to do so, because that's obviously a high target rich environment. But it didn't work out that way. We were moving slower than we were thinking on pace. The amount of effort we were putting forth going up and down some of these reentrants was pretty significant. As you'll see, number 25, we should probably talk about that soon, but like number 25, if you zoom in there, normally I would have just, me being Chip, and if you know, I'm climbing that hill exactly like the race director said.
That was my fault.
I realized I don't think it was just you, Jason. I think everybody would have mutinied and had me on a pitchfork if I made you guys climb that hill. But it was the most direct route. It was the most efficient route. It was just going to be. We were tired, and just the idea of climbing that hill just was like, it was just soul crushing. And so I kind of capitulated. It was like, okay, we'll go around, even though I know it's going to take like an hour and a half to get around. And then we bobbled on the attack, and I don't know what we did on that compass bearing. I think we were just tired and falling asleep or something, or not declinated. But either way, we bumbled around there and eventually found it and then got out of there. But that gets you in the mindset of it. There's the most efficient route, which is at point to point if possible, and then you start taking into account topography, and then you got to take into account the morale and the amount of effort the team's putting forth. And if they just don't have it in them to climb straight up a hill on all fours and scree and bugs and all that stuff, then sometimes it's just better just to go around. And so that was kind of I think that was kind of a team decision. Like, let's just go around. We got 30 hours. It ain't gonna kill us.
Yeah.
But also,
sorry, real quick, just to add to that, is we had just come down a huge steep reentrant filled with rhododendron, right? So like thinking about, is that what we're going to face going back up? I think that was part of the decision-making process there.
Yeah.
I can imagine, because, that is like 800 feet of elevation change in a really short amount of time. And you'd already been doing that right there. I can see where you're talking about, like, and especially if you're bushwhacking. And from what I understand, this was the hardest point of the entire race. There were many teams that had a hard time with this point, and including, the big news that Bones could not find this point. They're a really well-known, great team that never found that point. So it was definitely challenging. I was really excited when I saw you guys nab it, because from my perspective, it didn't take you that long comparatively. I was kind of worried about you guys, because I knew this was the second night. And so, a lot of people who don't adventure race wonder about the sleep. And so if this was your first sleep down here by checkpoint 21, this is already the second night of the race. And I want to talk about how you manage sleep. But before we go on to that, I just want you to have one more chance to say, if you want to say anything about your decisions here. Like, once you had gotten all of the mandatory points, you came down here kind of south into the southeast to get numbers E9 and E10. So you did get 2 optional points on this stage of the race, but you didn't come over here to the cluster, which I thought you might. So do you think that had anything to do with sleep, or was it just strategy, or was there something else that once you got here made you think we should go around? And then what made you head back?
One is it started raining, actually storming, like lots of wind, lots of rain and all of that. So for coming down to the road, we're pretty much dry and everybody's happy and hot. Once it started raining, I think that takes a little bit of wind out of your sails. You move a little bit slower, your feet start getting wet. It's also starting to get dark. The 2 points down to the southeast were very flat. It was like you just walk down the road and go get them and come back. There wasn't any elevation change. There wasn't any bushwhacking. Their points were very straightforward. You just had to put in a lot of mileage. If you loop back around and go into that big reentrant, if you notice those checkpoints, some are down in the reentrant and some are on top of the reentrant. So this is going to be up, down, up, down, up, down. Although it's a target-rich environment, you can see the topo. There's 3 of them that are down in the reentrant, and then there's 2 on the ridge line above the reentrant. Again, I think we were fatigued. Our feet I know, especially my feet were starting to get a little chewed up from being wet. The thought of getting down into that, and I think Caitlin probably said it basically. We had a time in which we wanted to get back to the TA to get on the bikes for the next leg. And I think we just did the assessment and said, at the pace we're moving, which was slower than normal, we're not going to make it to the TA in time. So we got to give up that cluster. Again, I kind of regret it, because look at it, there's 6 points right there, all in that nearby. Like, could we have just, scrapped the 2 to the east, gone straight down there and just suffered through it? Could have got more points.
Yeah, even looking at the distance now, you can see it's like, wow, those were the 2 we got. Even though it was kind of flat, they were right on the trail. They were easy to get, but it's like that was an out and back. So we added a lot of mileage when we could have gone and got the cluster and just looped around and not done an out and back. And you know what I mean? We could have.
Yeah.
So, but we really didn't know if that cluster was a trap, right? Like what Chip was saying with the up and down in there. It's like, well, what does it really look like? I mean, there's one thing when it looks like on the map and then when you're actually there. So, you know, it was like, is that a trap that we're going to be stuck in and lose time on, you know?
So you look at the map, like when you look at the tracker map, it doesn't look that bad. You look at that map, you can see the topo lines are super tight together. So to get from E1 to E2, you might not be able to go up that. And again, we're new to this E section. We're not the scale of the maps. If you also notice, I think this is 124,000. Some of the other maps are 150th. But it's like you don't know if you're going to be able to get up that or not, or if you have to go all the way around. So even though the points are clustered, you don't know how much mileage you're going to have to put in. So again, we were playing a little bit conservative and trying to make sure we meet the cutoffs. So I think that's why we didn't take that risk.
Yeah, I think that I wanted to show this map because this is actually the maps that you were given. And, you know, I had only seen this online while you were racing, and then Chip brought the maps home and I kind of studied them. And I thought when I was looking online, well, maybe it looks a little fuzzy just because it's online. Well, no, the maps in real life on paper, they were a little fuzzy. Like it's just a lot of these little streams were really hard to make out. And I could see now when you're looking at this, that is, you know, pretty clearly a road with easy travel and not much elevation, where you're right. I mean, that's a lot of topo there. But I wonder, Caitlin, what did you think about the decisions for the logistics? And you started to sleep then. So were you the one to say, okay, this is how long we can sleep? And I know you're usually the person who sets the alarm and makes sure that we don't sleep through it. Did you play that role? And how did you manage all of that?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I did. So yeah, to pile on what Chip and Jason said, we were just tired. And plus those points were unknowns. And we had just come off a hard 25, you know, getting 25, and, you know, mentally, again, we were tired and we just didn't know if we could hit those points, but we knew the ones right off the road would be easy kills. And it also had started raining. And yes, as we went and got one of the points, it was under this pavilion. So it was like fantastic because that was a perfect place to sleep when it was raining. And so we went out and back, got the last points, came back to the pavilion, and there was other teams there that had the same idea we did. But yeah, I set the alarm and I was the one to kind of say, okay, we're going to get, you know, two and a half hours of sleep. And we slept under there. It was perfect actually. And then we got up, and then actually we just had to go to the T. Well, actually we tried to get one more on the way to the TA. And that was, you know, that was a miss. It was kind of, we actually got on the wrong path, the wrong trail off the main road. We were too early on it. And so, and it kind of didn't quite look right either. So I'm glad we didn't spend any more time on that one than we did. But again, it was kind of demoralizing to have to finish that long trek with that miss on that point. Yeah. But, you know, at the time, it seemed like a good decision to get the 2 knowns. But obviously, in hindsight, you're like kicking yourself a little bit that you just didn't go for those 6 points that were there. But again, you know, those were kind of unknowns. We didn't know if we'd be looking for any of those points. We were kind of running short on time. So, you know, we made the decision to get the 2 knowns and then take that road straight back.
So this is the point you were talking about. And it looks like a parallel mistake, and maybe even one that the race director might have anticipated, like, oh, let's just put this point over here, because then it's a little bit more challenging to make sure you're in the right place. But I was also wondering, and I bet other people are wondering too, you know, you slept there, but what does it mean you slept with? And I know a tent was required, sleeping bags were required, but was that changed because of the weather? And what did you actually use to sleep with?
Yeah, so actually we were only required to carry the tent on section E, and that was a change just before the race, just because of weather conditions. The weather was very warm. Just a little bit of rain was expected, which was the rain we got that night, and it wasn't very long. So we actually didn't use the tent. We used that pavilion, but for the rest of the nights that we did sleep, we either had a sleeping bag or a bivvy, even though I think just the space blanket was required, but again, because it was so warm. So we're actually able to save a lot of weight because, you know, we didn't have to carry the tent with us the entire time, which was very helpful.
Awesome. And did you guys say you had about 7 hours over the 6 days total?
I think we had about 7 hours. Like first night, I think we took 2 hours, and then
No, first night is 0.
okay, first night was 0, right? The first sleep we had was the second night. I think that was either around 2.5, and then we had another 2.5. And I think we had one night where we had about 3 hours. Maybe that was the second night. So I think we had 3 long sleeps total. So we didn't sleep the first night. We slept the next 3 nights, and then we did not sleep the last night. So yeah, we were pretty disciplined about, this is how much sleep we're going to get. And then, after the alarm went off, sometimes it's hard to get up, but you just commit to it, and then you go. And once you get going, you're ready to go again. But
yeah,
I think
I know you are. You're the one. You're like, you say we're pretty disciplined when everyone's disciplined enough not to let their teammates down. But Caitlin's the one who says it's time to get up. And so that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think it worked out for us. During the day, there were times where, in the middle of the day, you're kind of doing this kind of thing. And I think we might have stopped like once or twice, for someone to get a few minutes. But really, we didn't take the short 10 or 15 minute, naps that we typically do. We were pretty disciplined about being very steady. And then, on the canoe on the way back, we were just popping that caffeine because, we hadn't had any sleep that last night, but we were ready to finish. So yeah, it was probably less sleep than we're used to having. But I think everyone, took it very well, and we were still able to finish, finish well, even with the lack of sleep.
Yeah. So I have some more questions for Tomas, but first, Jason, that's probably the longest then you've raced. And did you think that was enough sleep? And did anything about that surprise you? Or what did you think about the sleep and racing that distance, or that many days, I should have said?
I actually didn't think it was as bad as I thought it could have been. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it could have been. So the only time the sleep really caught up with me was the last paddle section after the last trek. So that last 6 hours, I don't really remember much of that because I think I might have been sleeping the whole time while Tomas was paddling. So I was just nosediving that whole paddle. But aside from that, it didn't catch up to me too much. So I thought it was okay.
So just a side note, I was really glad to find out that last paddle was a pretty mellow paddle, not a lot of rapids, and just essentially not that dangerous. And you're all together. So I think that was kind of a neat design in that way. So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was going to defer to Tomas. I think you were just going to ask him a question, but that sleep, the decision not to sleep Friday night, Tomas had pointed something out. So I didn't want to kind of hand that over to him to explain.
All right, let's hear it, Tomas.
Yeah. Well, yeah, first of all, there were some rapids. Well, we couldn't see them, but they were there. It's just the last hour or 2 hours or so was just flat. And that's also a problem because then it's just flat. So it's just like, that's when you're sleeping. That's when Jason was like sleeping a lot there. But anyway, yeah. The last section, that was interesting. First of all, I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to waste time sleeping before the paddle. Yeah, that's a little dangerous, but I just didn't want to waste time because I didn't know what would happen, right? Before that, we were struggling with trying to figure out whether we can get one last checkpoint. And I know this is one of Chip's pet peeves. The issue with that one last checkpoint was that when we went, I calculated our paddle rate from the one trekking section to the other. And according to that paddle rate, it was going to take us more than 7 hours, that last paddle section. It's that's the one. Yeah. So
what you're saying is this section of the race from this last trek to the finish, you had calculated a certain amount of time.
Based on the rate that we paddled from the first trekking section to the other one. And that one was a little bit about 2.5 hours. And like based on that rate, from there it was going to be like 7 hours. And I know Heidi was there saying, "Oh, it's 5 hours." Well, in reality, it took us 6.25, so it took us faster than I thought, but it took us longer than what they were telling us. So it's a mixture of both. And it was too much uncertainty because we didn't know if there were rapids, if it was flat water. On flat water, we knew we were going to paddle slower. So this was a struggle. Trying to get that last CP was a struggle. Half the team wanted to go for it. The other half was a little bit reluctant just because of the paddle section.
So let me just interrupt you to explain that these were the points here, that all of these were mandatory points and you got all of those, but you came and you did all of these and you came around this way. And at this point, this is where you're saying you had an option of whether you wanted to come try to get G11 or G10 or G9. But knowing that you calculated 7 hours back to the finish, that
7 hours of paddle and then another hour on the last trekking section, which we were told that Ben had a lot of struggle with because they were too sleepy or whatever, that last trekking section. So it seemed to me that, hindsight, of course, we could have gone for it. Had we known that we were going to do it faster, with Dan right, we could have gone for it. We could have probably gone for 2 more, yes. But it was just too much. I know, it was just too much of an uncertainty on that side, especially knowing the rate that we paddle from one trekking section to the other. It was going to take us a little bit more than 7 hours.
So what I hear you saying, because we're running out of time, what I hear you saying is that it's really difficult to back math what you're going to be doing, taking into account, the rate you've been going, that you're tired. There was another trek in addition to just that paddle. Yeah. So you did the, somewhat conservative, but maybe not, that might not even be the right word. It might have just been the smart choice to make sure you didn't get, past the finish line overtime. And then they start taking points away from you. Yes. And that harried feeling at the end drives me bonkers. Like it makes me so nervous sometimes. So I was glad to see you guys cross the line.
However, there's one thing that was really, really good, and this is where it's just beautiful. We decided not to do the sleep. I think we were pretty much all on board of that. I think she wanted to bank some sleep before the paddle because it's just too dangerous. I don't think Katie and I didn't want to do the sleep. I don't know about Jason, but we just wanted to go for it. Here's the beautiful thing about no sleep on that paddle. There was another team that did actually bank 1 hour of sleep. We didn't know that they had exactly the same amount of checkpoints that we did. We didn't know that. After the race, I looked, I'm like, oh, wow. They decided to bank 1 hour of sleep. While they were sleeping, we launched our canoes. It took us about 6.25 to get to that paddle. It took them like 6 hours to get to that paddle, so they were a little faster. But they were 1 hour behind. They arrived before the paddle before we did. So they arrived at that section prior to the paddle before we did. But because they banked 1 hour of sleep, we passed them. So we gained another position just because of that. So
that is so cool.
Yes.
So I woke up in the morning surprised. I mean, you might have seen my post on the thisABILITY Facebook page. So I said, they won't do that because we're not known to either paddle very fast or transition very fast. And you guys surprised me. So I thought that was really cool. That's kind of a fun thing to happen late in the race. And since we're just about out of time, I want to give just a few minutes for each of you just to kind of share, like, how did you think this race compared to other races you did? Was it easier or harder because it's kind of in our backyard in the US? I also want to know, like, what makes a long race, like a multi-day, different than a 1 or 2 day race? And then I just really want to know, why do you think adventure racers are drawn to the sport? And you can pick and choose from all of those questions I just said. And we'll go in the same order we did in the beginning. So Jason, what do you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the expedition races this long, it's just adds a lot more strategy. It's a lot more, I mean, shorter races are fun too, but now that I've done something this long, it's, I knew I'd come in either thinking, man, this is going to really suck. I don't want to do these big ones anymore. Or these are awesome. This is all I want to do. So I think it's the latter. It was really great, just top to bottom.
Awesome. I think that's great. That's the experience I've had. What about you, Tomas?
I loved it. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It was just so amazing. It was the hardest, of course. I knew it was going to be the hardest expedition race that I've done because the other ones were less time and flatter. And but overall, it was a nice experience. And having a good team. Also, even though I barely knew everybody, it was just a wonderful experience. And like I said, I was on high most of the time, probably all the time, I guess. I'm having some blues now.
That's awesome. How about you, Caitlin?
Yeah, I thought I love the course. You know, I felt really remote. Like even when we were on roads, you know, with the exception of the two like busy roads we were on, but even when we were on roads, it felt like really remote. There was, you know, little traffic. So you know, I thought the course was really well done. I thought it was just challenging enough, and I thought we executed really well. You know, we were really steady. We did make a couple bobbles here and there that, you know, over the entire 5 days didn't cost us a whole lot of time. I thought with any of the nav errors, we tried to recover quickly, but overall, you know, we kept moving, and our nav was pretty well done, and I think that contributed to the, you know, the success of the team as well. So yeah, it was fun. I thought we did well and had a great time out there.
Awesome. How about you, Chip?
As always, I love the expedition races. You get fully immersed in what's going on. You know, it's just not the same as like a 24-hour race where just balls to the wall, burn it up, get blisters, who cares, just get through the race. These are races of attrition. It's a matter of being durable and making smart decisions over the team can progress through the course with the least amount of like massive suffering and injury. So it's just a different sport. The emotions are very much higher and lower. Like there's a lot of volatility in the emotions, and so so the colors are more vibrant, the smells are better, the scenery like will bring tears to your eyes. Like everything you're experiencing is just so much more vivid. You just can't get that in your day-to-day of like going to work and answering email and watching Netflix and making dinner and walking the dog. It's just completely different. So I would encourage anybody that you know, feels that they are interested in this sport, that it seems scary. 5 days, I mean, you're basically homeless for 5 days, you know, like drinking out of streams and living on the ground. But seriously, it's some of the best moments of my life, and I'm just glad these guys love to go out there and do it with me, and the team really gelled. Like you do one of these races, you feel like you got friends forever, and the experiences you share, you know, it's very difficult to replicate that, I think. So so I don't know, overall I'm just super stoked that we just pulled off an amazing race and had a good time. Like Tomas and we just laughed the whole time. I mean, the amount of joking that we did was off the charts.
Chip, one more thing. Chip, can you add, do you think you can add the last point when we had that team behind us on the last checkpoint? Do you want to talk about that?
We probably should. It's at 10:03. I guess we can go over a little bit. Andrea, can you bring back up the last checkpoint? Because it was a photo finish to a 5-day race. I think that was a big highlight for all of us.
Yeah, we didn't.
That was another high for all
of us, but that was definitely a high.
That was a high for all 4 of us, definitely. It was so much fun. Go ahead, Chip.
So like they were saying, like Caitlin was saying, like basically a whole armada of boats left the TA at the same time to come down to this checkpoint. For whatever reason, we ended up in almost the lead. It was Rod Eglin and Goals. They hit the TA first out of that whole group. We came in just maybe 15 minutes behind them. But we knew, like, one of his goals is also, I mean, we love these guys. They're good friends of ours, but they're also co-ed, 4+ co-ed. So we wanted to be competitive. And we also knew these other teams behind us were coming in fast and hard. So we talked through it. Like, we're going to get out. We're going to transition fast. We are running to the finish line because you never know. So so right there at the takeout, we transitioned really quick, which is odd for me. Because remember, we had to take all of our gear out of the boat. Everything other than the boat had to be on your backs. Your paddles are sticking up, your life jackets, everything's wet. You're having to change shoes. Big pain in the butt. But we transition fast. We start hauling butt towards that CP. Meanwhile, I think Ron and Goals, they noticed that we were transitioning fast, so they start transitioning fast. And then another team had come in, and they came in even more prepared than we did. They just had to jump out of the boat and start going. Like they didn't even need to change their shoes. And this was only what's their name?
Only mostly lost.
Only mostly lost, right? So, and we had been leapfrogging with them earlier. So they came off the boat super competitive. Everybody basically came off competitive, racing to the finish. So we start bolting up that hill, trying to get to the CP there, the little green dot, and the trails on the map did not line up. Like this was like, holy crap! Now it's a nav. Like, this is going to be really difficult. And but we see the teams coming up the hill. We scatter. We're trying to find the reentrant. And and we got this on video too. I'm so glad Tomas was videoing some of this, because I was nabbing and I wasn't paying attention to the video. So I bolted down to this reentrant that was a little bit deeper than the rest, and I see the CP seriously like 40 meters away or something. I see the CP through the trees, but I didn't want to go for it because usually Caitlin's our punch monkey. So I was like, Caitlin, come here, like stand in front of me. You see over my shoulder back there? The CP's down there. Now, go secretly go get it, secretly come back out. And so she bolts in like a jackrabbit and digs around and goes, finds the CP. Meanwhile, we're sitting there, Tomas and I and Jason, we're looking at the map and acting like we don't know where we are. And we're like waiting on Caitlin to come out. She's trying to hide from everybody. And then all the other teams have now descended and they're milling around looking for the point. We're trying to act like we have no idea at this point where it is. And then Caitlin somehow comes sneaking out of the bushes. And the minute she's like, got it. And then we start hauling ass up to get our gear and get to the finish line. Now, as you see, our blue line goes right through the building. That's because we went through the building. We literally like knocking on the door because the door was locked, and another team that had already finished let us in the door, bust through the building, right through the middle of it, jump out the other side, and then follow. And we actually took a little bit of a wrong turn. If you see, we were a little bit too much southeast instead of the green trail. So then we come around that building. We're like, crap, we like took the wrong stairway. And I'm so worried that other team is going to come over the hill and hit the finish line before us because I took that wrong turn on the stairs. And seriously, that whole thing was uphill and we were just running. Everybody's out of breath. But either way, at the end, we crossed the finish line, huffing and puffing, grinning ear to ear. Can't believe it's a photo finish, on a race of that length. And then the other teams start flowing across the finish line. And they even came up, only mostly lost. They even came up and said, man, that was so much fun fighting with you guys. Like the whole race, it seemed like we were neck and neck. And so I don't know, even though it's 5 days, even though you're spread out, sometimes you kind of hit it off with another team and it can be like competitive, like a real race where you're side by side and doing all this type of stuff. But I don't know. I think we all got to the finish line, grinning ear to ear and high five. And just like, that was the way you want to finish. Like some teams come across the finish line, they just walking up. It's kind of ho-hum boring. We came in on fire. And that just felt really good.
So I think it's just so cool, first off, that no one got hurt. You all made it to the finish line together. And just then to have that adrenaline, like at the very end, that must have been really, really fun. We didn't get to talk about a lot of stuff. We didn't talk about any nutrition. We didn't talk about any gear. We didn't talk that much about what it's like to be around other teams and kind of the vibe you get when you're at an adventure race. But I imagine it's like all the other races we've done. These are great people. You have a lot of fun. And that's just, I would have loved to see that in person. Anyway, thanks for sharing what your experience was like. I hope that people that are watching get out of this that you can do big races like this. All of us are weekend warriors, and it's just an amazing experience. You should try it. If you don't start at a 5-day race, go out there and try a 3-hour course, maybe even start with a 1-hour orienteering meet. But if you want to start adventure racing, feel free to reach out to us and we'll help point you in the right direction. And thanks for joining me, team. I can't wait till we get to race again.
I got to jump in on one thing. We've got
Okay.
Rootstock Racing, all the volunteers, Abby and Brent. They put on an amazing race. The volunteers were smiling, helpful. One lady had a gluten-free pizza for me, like specifically for me. They were amazing. The media team, I thought, did an amazing job compared to a lot of races where you can't figure out what's going on. Andrea, you doing the dot watching and helping keep the media team on track of what was going on and all the commentary. I haven't even had a chance to go through it because literally you would need a whole week to watch it. So I think all of the behind the scenes part of this race was top notch. And we've done a lot of races around the world. This was a really, really good one. I also really appreciated that Heidi Muller came in, the CEO of ARWS. She came in all the way from South Africa to participate with the race. She was almost at every TA and videoing teams and talking to teams and encouraging them. So we just felt, I don't know about you guys, we felt like celebrities coming through with the just all the media and all the volunteers and everybody there. So it's a big shout out to Rootstock for pulling off an amazing event.
I'm so glad you remembered to say that. I would have felt terrible if we ended this without mentioning all of that. So thanks. Okay, guys. Well, have a good night.
Nice.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.